In 2012, Byron Smith was mad as hell, and he wouldn't take it anymore. Two rotten, no-good punks had been breaking into his home and stealing cash and precious heirlooms. So he went to his basement, turned off the lights, and loaded his rifle. Then he waited. In 2018, Michael Drejka had just been violently shoved to the ground in the parking lot of his neighborhood convenience store. He fell hard, and the man who pushed him just stood there at first. Then Michael could have sworn he took a step forward, so he reached for his handgun, aimed, and fired. Then he secured his weapon and called 911. In 2020, Ahmaud Arbery was chased down a county road and was cut off by a pickup with two men. Another man in a pickup rolled up behind him, and now he had nowhere to go. Three men, working in tandem, now had Ahmaud trapped, and they decided his fate. These are three stories of vigilantes who meted out their own twisted justice. And this is absolutely criminal. In 2012, Byron Smith was retired from the U.S. State Department and lived in a small home on a sprawling, overgrown lot in Little Falls, Minnesota. His house had been repeatedly burglarized over the past 6 months. Thieves had made off with thousands in cash, World War II memorabilia from his father's time as a POW, and the medals and ribbons he'd earned during his own time in the Air Force. To make matters worse, his neighbor Bill called and said he saw one of the pilfering punks wearing a stolen coat at the high school bus stop. It seems 18-year-old Haley Kiefer and her 17-year-old cousin Nick Brady committed a couple of the break-ins, and Haley was wearing one of her trophies. Byron was going to make damn sure nobody took advantage of him again. So on Thanksgiving Day, he would set a trap and put an end to their midnight marauding for good. He got in his truck and moved it a few hundred feet down the remote roads to his neighbor's house. After walking back, he shut off all the lights and descended into the basement. He sat down in a chair tucked between two bookcases, loaded his rifle, and waited. If anyone broke into his house tonight, it would be the last thing they ever did. When he sat down, Byron picked up a recording device, turned it on, and set it on the shelf next to him. Then he waited. Eventually, there in the dark, the silent witness recorded the first sound after hours of quiet. His pulse must have quickened as he heard the intruder enter his home through the shattered window. Byron made no sound as he heard footsteps on the stairway. As Nick Brady descended the stairs in the dark, the first shot rang out. Nick tumbled down the stairs and laid helpless as Byron Smith delivered a gratuitous coup de grace with a shot to the face.
You're dead.
He felt justified as he placed Nick's body on a tarp and dragged it off to his adjacent workshop. He would later say he did this to avoid getting blood on the carpet. He then sat down and quietly reloaded his rifle. Once again, he loomed in the blackness, knowing the kid usually worked with an accomplice. 10 minutes later, Haley Kiefer entered the basement and whispered Nick's name as she took her last fateful downward steps. Byron dispatched her in the same manner. This time, before he could put her out of her misery, his rifle jammed. He retrieved his .22 and shot her in the head.
You're dying.
Haley screamed in an awful combination of pain and fear.
Bitch.
When she stopped moving, he laid her on a fresh tarp, pulled her to the workshop, and laid her next to the corpse of her cohort. Then Byron noticed Haley was still gasping, and he finished her off. An act he would later justify as compassion. The case renewed a debate about Minnesota's Castle Doctrine, a law similar to Florida's often discussed Stand Your Ground. The legislation protects homeowners who kill in self-defense. Smith largely rendered that defense moot, however, when he delivered his signature finishing shots.
In Minnesota, the law says that you can defend your dwelling if you believe that a life-threatening felony is about to occur, and you have to reasonably believe that, and you have to take reasonable action. And so when a person in that position is using an expletive, or what he also said, according to transcripts, was if you're trying to shoot somebody and they laugh at you, you go again. What we know about what happened with him and Kiefer was that he shot her once and the gun jammed. She supposedly laughed at him. He decided to go again. He got another gun to take another shot. All of that's recorded. And I think that in combination with the expletive really hurts his self-defense case.
Byron wasn't done incriminating himself. For nearly 24 hours, the two bodies laid in his basement because, he says, he didn't want to ruin Thanksgiving for anyone. Well, anyone besides Nick and Haley's families. After a full night and morning, police were finally summoned to the house, and Byron was taken into custody. On April 29, 2014, both sides had rested their cases, and all eyes were on the jury box. When jurors went back to the deliberation room, they took about as long as you'd figure it would take to fill out the forms, have a snack, and hit the restroom. After only 3 hours, the jury came back in the courtroom and convicted Smith of 2 counts of first-degree murder, with premeditation, and 2 counts of second-degree murder. He was immediately and automatically sentenced to life in prison, no parole. Michael Drejka was passionate about parking spaces, and we mean it. It seems like this man was appointed hall monitor in the 5th grade and never relinquished the post. He's the son of a former Delaware state trooper, and although he never joined law enforcement, he did his best to emulate his dear old dad. On July 19, 2018, Michael headed out to the Circle A, his favorite local convenience store. But there was only so much convenience Drejka could take. It was time to bring a little inconvenience to someone's day, and as he pulled into the parking lot, he observed a car parked in a handicapped space. There was a woman in the driver's seat and 2 kids in the back seat. The self-appointed chief of the placard police made an orbit around the vehicle, trying to locate that familiar blue and white permit. The driver of the idling Chrysler 200, Brittany Jacobs, naturally wondered what the hell this stranger was doing, circling her sedan like a shark. So she asked him, and a conversation ensued about the parking space and her permissibility. Words became heated, and people began to notice. Brittany was a certified nursing assistant and a busy mom of 3. Those 3 kids and their father, her boyfriend Markeis McGlockton, had just picked her up from work. On the way home, they stopped at the Circle A. Brittany waited in the car with 2 of the children, while Markeis went inside the store with their oldest, 5-year-old Markeis Jr. The commotion outside was becoming increasingly audible inside the store, and customers who entered started to talk about an argument in the parking lot. A concerned Markeis rushed out the door to discover a red-faced Michael Drejka looming around his car and yelling at his family. He approached Michael from behind and leveled him with a forceful push. Seconds after Markeis put Drejka on his derriere, Michael drew his weapon. It appeared that Markeis immediately reacted to the threat, raising his hand slightly and stepping back. That's when Michael made a split-second move that would have long-lasting consequences. As Markeis rocked back onto his heels and began to give the body language of surrender, something entirely different happened in Michael Drejka's fearful frontal lobe. In his mind's eye, Markeis took a step toward him. Then, believing the unarmed man was somehow going to kill him, he unholstered his piece and shot from the hip. One bullet, fired just the right angle to pierce the 28-year-old father's heart and lung. Shocked and staggered, he stumbled back into the store, where he would tragically bleed out in front of his 5-year-old namesake. Markeis McGlockton grew up in Clearwater, Florida, and attended school in St. Petersburg. In 2009, Markeis met Brittany Jacobs through a mutual friend. They would go on to fall in love and have 3 children together. He was a dedicated stay-at-home dad during the day until Brittany got home from her nursing job. Then he would get whatever sleep he could before working a graveyard shift at 7-Eleven. As customers and employees called 911 to report the gunshot, Michael calmly gathered himself and his weapon, walked back to his vehicle, and secured it in the glove compartment. Then he called 911 as well. That's just what a law-abiding citizen would do. He bravely defended himself from getting punched in the face. He stood his God-given, law-granted ground. But unfortunately, Michael brought a gun to a fistfight. Although Markeis shouldn't have pushed Michael to the ground, he didn't deserve the wildly disproportionate response he got. Michael started off the police interview with a jovial demeanor, nursing his sore shoulder and acting like one of the guys. Cops played along, and Michael was trying hard to create an atmosphere of camaraderie.
We just want to talk to you reference today's shooting that occurred at 1201 Sunset Point Road in Clearwater, Florida. So just walk through, you leave your house and you drive up to the store?
No, I was coming back from the Wawa down on Missouri and Rosary to get some cash and headed home, stop by the store, boom.
Oh, okay. So you get to the store, tell me, kind of walk me through what happens.
Well, I park my car and that's my store. I'm there every day, plain and simple. And every day there's somebody pulled in the handicap spot there, just waiting on somebody.
Okay.
So I have a pet peeve about it.
Sure.
I, said, do you mind, moving? There's a spot next to her and there's spots out front. And she inquired about what was going on. So,
Okay.
And that's when I told her. I said, it's not very polite to park here when there's other people who need to use this. She says, is it affecting you directly? I said, if my mother-in-law rolls in, yes, it will be. So, there was nothing, there was none of that between us at all.
Okay.
No, nothing. It was just heated words, that's all.
Michael has one pet peeve, and it's parking space poachers. But so far, according to him, everything was fine.
So you guys are talking?
Yeah, exactly. She's out of the car by this time.
Okay.
Standing next to it, that's all.
Okay.
And I got hit from the left side and thrown straight backwards in line with her car.
Okay.
So if you saw the two white ladder lines next to the thing, that's where I was standing. Okay, so I went almost straight back after I got hit.
What do you mean hit?
I was standing like this talking to her.
Okay.
I was hit from right here. The shoulder was pulled in front of me, and then I was.
Oh, okay.
And then
All
I
right.
hit the ground.
Okay.
Okay.
So you landed on the pavement?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I was on the ground. So that time I had to put hand down to get hand out from underneath. As I come out, I start drawing my weapon. As I start leveling off my weapon, he makes his next step towards me.
Did he say anything to you?
Negative. Not a word.
Okay. Did you say anything to him?
No.
Like back up? Or?
No.
Okay.
I couldn't level it with one hand, so I had to eventually try and bring my left around for support.
Okay.
And he made his step towards me, and that was that.
How many steps did he make?
Just one step.
Okay. Once you pull the gun out.
Yes.
Okay. You said he stepped towards you?
Yeah.
Because I don't
Made
know
one more step. Right, he made one more step towards me.
And then what do you do?
I didn't say a word. Gun
Okay.
was already out.
Okay, what do you do?
Fire my weapon.
How many times did you fire?
One time, sir.
Okay. Did you strike him?
I don't know. I assume so, yes, because there was an ambulance there.
Okay. So you don't know if you hit him?
I know nothing, but I would assume so.
Okay. What do you do from there?
Wait for you.
Okay. Do you make any statements to anybody?
Negative.
Okay, on the parking lot?
Other than telling people it's probably not a good idea to be in here right now.
Okay.
Customers pulling in now. I spoke to no one else.
Okay.
After he thoughtfully warned newly arriving customers about himself, Michael Drejka secured his weapon and waited for the law to arrive. Why, they'd probably pat him on the back and buy him a donut when they heard about his harrowing ordeal. Detectives just needed him to come in and clear up a few details. But of course, anything he could do to help them clear their caseloads.
So you walk up to her car and you say, I was looking for handicap placards.
Correct.
And then what did she say?
What's it matter to you? I said, well, it wouldn't matter to me unless my mother-in-law showed up right now and needed a place to park.
But it does matter to you because somebody's parked there.
At that moment, yeah.
You sure?
So, yeah.
And your mother-in-law wasn't in the car?
No.
Okay.
She asked me what was the matter. I gave her a hypothetical.
Please, won't someone think of the mother-in-laws?
Next thing you know, you get pushed?
I'm blind. Pushed nothing. Tackled. I'm
Okay.
blindsided, dude.
Okay.
I am on the ground hard.
So he shoved you pretty hard.
No, for what it felt like is he come running at me.
Okay. Like full force.
Dude, I haven't been hit like that since I was in my 20s.
Okay. All right. So he shoves you to the ground. You fall to the ground.
Correct.
Okay.
Slightly, dude. Not very. Slightly.
Okay. Do you hit your head?
Don't know. Don't feel anything.
Okay.
Don't know.
So you don't know if
he's sideways like this. I know this landed under my gun. Okay, so I landed on my wrist on my gun.
Okay.
Had to reach over to extract my hand.
To push yourself
To
back.
push myself up off of that. And as I'm reaching and pulling around, he's standing in front of me. As I come up, he's taking his step towards me.
Okay.
Michael then went on to do a reenactment with detectives, where he seemed to further embellish the idea that Markeis was coming toward him before he shot.
All right, I bring the gun out with me. And as I'm coming back this way, I can't support it. So I hit this.
Okay.
And as
What does he do?
as I come out like this, he's taking his step.
Okay. Taking a step?
Taking his steps towards me.
Okay. How close does he get to you before you fire the gun?
Maybe to the front tire.
So show me where. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay, so right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Was he charging after you?
2 steps running.
Okay. Well, you're saying he was running?
Well, it would have been running when he got out of behind the car.
Okay. All right.
I gotta get off.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want you to hurt yourself.
No.
He was free to go following the questioning, minus his phone and the clothes he was wearing. But he would have no need for those things shortly anyway. He was arrested and charged with manslaughter about 3 weeks later. Shortly after his arrest, Michael Drejka was interviewed by a local reporter.
A lot of people involved with this case have spoken up. The sheriff has spoken out. The prosecution has spoken out. Now that you have a chance to look back, is there anything you would change with what happened, how it happened? Is there anything that you would change, or I'm sure you had time to think about this?
Sure. I've had plenty of time to think about it, but as far as changing anything as events,
Right.
is what you're...
Right.
I don't see... I really did. No, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
There is literally nothing he would do differently, which seems to suggest he felt the shooting was justified, even after plenty of time to reflect.
This is coming from people that have come down to speak about the events and things of that nature, and they get the feeling that there might be a racial overtone to this incident.
No, there's almost no way of that. Number one, my upbringing really
Right.
prevents that from coming out of me ever. My parents weren't that way.
Right.
You know, it was always try and get along with everybody. Green eggs and ham. You
Right.
know, everybody's different. And I grew up during desegregation, not segregation. Okay, so it's not like was sheltered from other cultures or
Right.
races, from a very young age. And my professionalism beyond that prevents me from saying stuff like that anyway.
So I can look you in the eye right now and ask you,
Yes.
if you are a racist, what would be your answer?
No.
You do not hate black people.
I do not hate anybody. I don't see. I have to break it down into a person or anything. But that's what's happened. Okay, that's what it's become.
Right.
Something that was one thing has become something else, and that is mostly in the eyes of the beholders. I don't see how it can be any other way.
We're not sure why he used so many words to answer that question, but I think the ones he was looking for were, "I'm not a racist."
All right, and if the defense would remain standing, and if Madam Clerk would please publish our verdict.
Yes, Your Honor. State of Florida versus Michael Drejka, case number 1809851CF, as to the charge of manslaughter. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter as charged. If and only if you find the defendant guilty of manslaughter, then please further find if the state has proven this fact beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant carried, displayed, used, threatened to use, or attempted to use a firearm during the commission of the crime. Yes. So say we all, Timothy J. Kleinman, foreperson of the jury, dated this day, August 23rd, 2019.
At his sentencing, the judge lambasted the parking lot prude. It looks like Michael will have plenty of time to reflect on his actions.
Brittany Jacobs drives her vehicle to the Circle A convenience store. Markeis McGlockton is in the front passenger seat, and their 3 young children are in the back seat. Brittany parks in the infamous handicap parking space. We see Markeis going into the store along with their 5-year-old son. Michael Drejka, the defendant in this case, then drives up rather quickly and parks his vehicle near Brittany's vehicle. And the most ironic thing about this whole case is he parks illegally. He doesn't even park in a parking space. So a wannabe police officer is there. He gets out of the vehicle. He approaches Brittany's vehicle. He looks all around the vehicle, looks into the vehicle. Brittany rolls down the window. She's not going to be as respectful as the defendant would like. She argues with him and shows a lack of respect. The defendant becomes irate. Markeis approaches the defendant, and no doubt about it, he pushes him down, and he pushes him down hard. The gun comes out. Markeis doesn't step toward the defendant. Markeis goes back, and he turns his body as if to flee back into the store. The defendant then shoots Markeis in the side. Obviously, this corroborates the fact that he was turning his body. Markeis then flees into the store where he collapses, and he dies right in front of his 5-year-old son. The defendant insisted that Markeis took a step toward him right before he shot him, and at one point, the defendant stated that Markeis took even more than one step. Markeis is not advancing. The defendant admitted that the shooting would be unjustified if Markeis was retreating or standing still. The jury found that the defendant's actions were not excusable and they were not justified. The sentence will be as follows. Mr. Drejka, I'm going to find you guilty. I'm going to adjudicate you guilty. I'm going to sentence you to 20 years in the Department of Corrections with all credit for time served.
The past decade has seen a rise in vigilantism. Byron Smith and Michael Drejka were part of an upward trend that continued up to and through 2020. On February 23rd of that year, Ahmaud Arbery, a 25-year-old black man from Georgia, was hunted, chased down, and cornered by 3 white men. Father and son Gregory and Travis McMichael cut Arbery off while William "Roddy" Bryan rolled up and rolled his camera, capturing this savage and senseless murder. It would be this video recording that ultimately sealed the trio's fate. He whipped out his phone to document a crime, just not the one he intended. But first, Absolutely Criminal is honored and excited to appear on Crime and Justice by Mentor Lawyer. We will have access to his raw materials and information that will improve the quality of our show, and we have some big plans in store for you. What do you think? Did race play a role in the Michael Drejka case? Let us know below in the comment section. If you're enjoying Absolutely Criminal and want to see more stories like this, please hit thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. The Arbery family said Ahmaud had a big, easy smile and liked to jog every day for exercise. He was a former high school football star at Brunswick High, where he graduated in 2012. He was a tenacious linebacker on the field, but at 5'10" was deemed too small for the NFL. So he made a living working long hours at a truck wash and at his father's landscaping company. At 25, Ahmaud was just beginning to discover who he was and figure out life. But that would be brutally taken away from him on a lonely road in southern Georgia. 64-year-old Gregory McMichael worked as a police officer from 1982 to 1989, and then as an investigator for the DA's office from 1995 until he retired in 2019. His son Travis, 34, served in the U.S. Coast Guard as a mechanic from 2007 to 2016. Mr. Johnny on the Spot, William "Roddy" Bryan, was a 50-year-old mechanic and worked in a hardware store in Brunswick, Georgia. Ahmaud Arbery was running down a street in the Satia Shores neighborhood.
Hello? 911, what's the address of emergency? I'm out here at Satia Shores. There's a black male running down the street. Satia, where at Satia Shores? I don't know what street we're on. Stop right there! Is it? Stop! Travis! Sir, hello, sir.
Apparently in this neighborhood, seeing a black man running in the street is an emergency. On the day of his murder, Ahmaud Arbery was walking through a house under construction, perhaps out of curiosity. He then started running down the street. This was suspicious to the McMichaels, and the pursuit ensued. GBI agent Richard Dial gave a chronology of the events in a preliminary hearing.
From the surveillance video across the street from the house that's under construction, you see Mr. Arbery coming up to the house, going directly into the house. From the interior video of the house, you see him just wandering around, again, not taking anything. He's just walking around, looking around inside the under construction building. So Greg McMichael hops into the back bed of the truck. Mr. Bryan makes statements that he continues to try to block in Mr. Arbery. While going down Holmes Road, Mr. Bryan turns on his cell phone camera and begins to try to videotape Mr. Arbery. So at some point, Mr. Arbery turns around and starts heading back towards Mr. Bryan. Mr. Bryan gets out of the way as Arbery runs past him, and then he sees the McMichaels come forward. Now at this point in the video, Mr. Bryan has put the video down, so you don't have video of this sequence of events. Mr. Bryan picks up the phone, it's been videotaping the whole time, and holds it up so you have a view. Mr. Arbery then comes up to a position, sees Travis McMichael, then makes a decision and turns and decides to engage Travis McMichael. You hear a shot, then you see Travis McMichael moving backwards with Mr. Arbery. Obviously they were engaged in a physical confrontation at this point. They go off the screen. You then hear a second shot where you see blood and spray into the screen, a mist of it. Then they come back in to the view of the camera. Mr. Arbery is striking Travis McMichael. There's a struggle going on, and then you see a third shot occur. The firearm being lowered down like that. When you see after the third shot, you then see Mr. Arbery get past Travis McMichael and continue running down Holmes, almost right there at the intersection, and then he falls.
When police arrived, they encountered Travis McMichael. There he was, wearing the back-spattered blood of his murder victim. The response of the police was strikingly lax. Upon arrival, Ahmaud may still have been breathing, but the police appear to do nothing for him as they secure the scene. Then they politely question the blood-covered man who just shot a man 3 times at close range with a shotgun. Police give the similar genteel treatment to McMichael Sr. and Roddy Bryan, and then to many people's astonishment, the police simply left, not a single pair of hands being cuffed. In fact, no arrests would be made for 2 months. Then on May 5th, 2021, Gregory McMichael did something strange. We're no lawyers, but I don't think it helped his case. He wanted to clear up some rumors, so he pressured attorney Alan Tucker to send the video to a local radio station, who published it on their website. Hours later, it was uploaded to YouTube and quickly went viral. The 3 vigilantes were buried by an attention avalanche of their own making. The same day, District Attorney Tom Durden, perhaps feeling the heat, announced he would refer the case to a grand jury. 2 days later, on May 7th, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations found probable cause to charge Gregory McMichael and son with felony murder. The pair were booked into Glynn County Jail and were denied bond pending their trial. After another 14 days of investigation and public outrage, police arrested Roddy Bryan. They learned during their probe that he attempted to block Arbery with his truck and actually struck him once while chasing him. The trio were tried together and faced overwhelming evidence that their self-defense was weak at best. They were all found guilty of multiple counts of felony murder, among other charges. Sentencing was on January 7, 2022. Gregory and Travis McMichael each received a mandatory sentence of life without parole. William Bryan got life with parole after 30 years.
In this case, getting back to the video, again, after Ahmaud Arbery fell, the McMichaels turned their backs. It's, again, a disturbing image, and they walked away. This was a killing. It was callous, and it occurred, as far as the court is concerned, based upon the evidence, because confrontation was being sought.
But that was far from the end of their consequences. All three men faced a federal trial, each charged with interference with rights, a hate crime specifying that they used force to intimidate and interfere with Arbery's right to use a public street because of his race. It didn't take the FBI very long to find texts and social media posts between Travis McMichael and Roddy Bryan that referred to black people as monkeys and used the N-word in casual conversation. The federal trial revealed a plethora of information that was previously unknown. It was discovered in open court that Gregory McMichael was a landlord. His neighbor said he once threatened to shut off a black tenant's air conditioning unless she paid rent. When she paid, he made a racial remark to his neighbor. Travis often described black people as savages and monkeys regularly in online communications. When Roddy Bryan found out his daughter was dating a black man, he said he would never accept the relationship. There are many, many more examples in court records of racist statements and actions by the intolerant triad. February 22nd. Again, facing a mountain of evidence against themselves, they were found guilty of all counts in the federal trial, including interference with Ahmaud Arbery's rights. The McMichaels were additionally found guilty of using, carrying, and brandishing a gun during a crime of violence. They all face life in prison on top of their life in prison. Lives were lost over stolen items, parking spaces, and for simply existing in the wrong neighborhood. 5 men who felt justified and confident talking to police after their wrongful acts. In a world where so many are worried about what the other guy is doing, sadly, there's no shortage of these stories. Vigilantes are spawned somewhere every day in this country. They're just not all fighting for the right cause.